You're listening to Dr. Ron's Words of Wisdom, words on leadership, goal setting, productivity, and a whole lot more. Consider it your vitamin or supplement for your mind, your heart, and your soul. Wherever you download podcasts, would you mind subscribing to Dr. Ron's Words of Wisdom? And would you leave a ratings, especially on iTunes, and write a couple of sentence review? It would help people to be able to find this podcast. The more people who rate, the more people who leave a review. If you would do that, I would greatly appreciate it. Hope you're having a great and blessed day. We have been these last few episodes just kind of defining and talking about leadership a little bit. There are some very simple definitions that people give about leadership, some that are much more complex and involved. Peter Drucker, the guru of leadership, probably gives one of the simpler ones. He says a leader is simply someone who has a follower or has followers. I remember years ago being in a leadership conference in which John Maxwell was speaking, in which he said, if you're leading, first you better turn around and see if anyone's following. If you turn around and no one's there, you're really not leading, you're just going for a walk. Well, Peter Drucker would agree with Maxwell. A leader is just someone who has someone or someone's following them. One of my favorite authors in the area of leadership over the years is Warren Bennis. I think his idea that a leader's job is to define reality and then at the end of the day to say thank you really summarizes leadership in an excellent way. But he's also said another thing that I like. And he said a leader is the person who has the capacity to translate vision into a reality. A lot of people have goals. A lot of folks have a vision of a preferable future that they imagine being out there somewhere. But the vast majority of people have no idea that how do I go from today where I have a vision, even if it's a God-given vision, how do I get from where I am today to that vision? What are the steps? What are the action plans? What are the procedures? What change needs to happen? What do I need to do more of or less of? They're almost paralyzed with wondering, how do I get from where I am today to where I need to be? But a person can define their leadership by their ability to break a vision down into bite-sized pieces and follow rigorously a plan, knowing that there'll be setbacks, getting off track periodically, trying something that doesn't work in particular, but that the leader keeps focused, keeps working till they translate that vision from just some slick something on a sheet of paper that gets quoted a lot until it becomes a reality. And you might say to me, Ron, how in the world does someone do that, or how does someone learn how to do that? I think the most effective way to learn that and the most effective way to do that is find someone that you have seen or observed or heard that they have accomplished that, and either figure out what they did. If they're still living and you are able to get access to them, go and have a conversation with them and say, could you just give me some of the hints, some of the tools, some of the practices, some of your best practices for when you had the vision? How did you bring it into reality? Bill Gates of Microsoft fame has an interesting definition of leadership I'd like for you to consider. Mr. Gates says, as we look ahead into the next century, leaders will be those who empower others. What I especially like about this definition is that its leadership is not about the leader. It's not about everyone lining up to serve the leader. It's not about the leader getting what they need, a corner office, bigger paycheck, bigger expense account. But a leader's goal is, how can I pour myself into the lives of others, and not just pour myself into them? How can I help people succeed? How can I pour myself into people in such a way that I make a positive contribution to their betterment and the betterment of the world? If you only want to be a leader because you think there are a lot of perks or it would be fun or you just want to have some authority, you are going to be sorely disappointed. And I hate to tell you this, but it's true. And everyone around you will be more than sorely disappointed. It's not about you, leader. It's about the other folks. Empower the people around you. I'm going to imagine that whenever you think about definitions of leadership, you're thinking of what John Maxwell found in that little book, Spiritual Leadership by J. Oswald Sanders. And now it's been quoted so much by John Maxwell, everyone, rightly so, ascribes it to him. And that is, leadership is influence. I've talked about this in previous podcasts in that if you have to continually tell people the bylaws of your organization says that I'm the leader, then you're really not the leader if you have to continually remind the people in your organization that you're the leader. The best leaders, and really at the heart of leadership, is the ability to influence. That's where character and competency are a must. The leaders who will have the most influence, regardless of what positions they hold, what degrees they have, and what their accomplishments are, the leaders who will have the most influence and be the greatest leaders are women and men of character and women and men of competency. People who learned their craft, who stretched themselves, who allowed themselves to learn from others and be readers, and they were just relentless in growth. Those are going to be the people who have the most influence and at the end of the day will be considered the greatest leaders. I know what happens when we hear all of these kinds of definitions. We all feel that we come up short. I'm just a regular, ordinary person. I would never be able to do all of those things that you have been talking about. But let me tell you what I absolutely believe wholeheartedly, and that God uses ordinary people. God must really love ordinary people. He has created so many of us. God uses ordinary people to do extraordinary things in the lives of others. You see, if you give yourself to God and He'll put you in a position of influence, you're going to be able, with His help, to do extraordinary things. Now, notice the sentence didn't end there, to do extraordinary things, but to do extraordinary things in the lives of others. When you leave a room, do people feel like it was a better place because you had been there? When you come into people's lives, are they glad to hear from you? They have confidence in you. And so maybe even if they don't particularly like what you're talking about or even agree with it, they say that is a person who has my best interest at heart, who wants me to succeed. Remember, doesn't matter if you're an ordinary person. Ordinary people down through the history of humanity have been used all the time, way out of proportion to their ability, their background, or what anyone else would have thought they could accomplish. And if you're going to be a leader, make up your mind. You're going to make not only the place better, but you're going to make every person you come in contact with a better person. But there's something also a little bit at times discouraging about leadership, especially as we talk about leading in relationship to people. Rarely is good leadership observable in the moment. I mean, you can do and work and put the hours in and pour into people and pour out of your life and make the changes and stretch and be relentless in growth. And you can, at the end of the day, some of those days I would step back and say, does it even make any difference to anyone that I'm here Have I actually made any difference in anyone's life or any organization's life? That's because leadership, good leadership, is rarely observable in the moment. It's only recognizable in the outcomes. And the outcomes, especially when you're working with people, could be days, weeks, months, years, and I might even say decades in the making. That's why early in my leadership time, I took up flower gardening. Not because I particularly liked it, but what I did like was on my day off when I would go out there and feed and water and prune. But what I especially loved doing was weeding the garden, because when I got from one end of the row to the other end of the row, I could look back and see that I actually made a difference. It looks better. At the end of the week or the month and sometimes the year, I could look back at what the folks that I'd been investing in and pouring into their lives, and I could see with the naked eye no appreciable difference. And I thought, what in the world difference does it make? And that's because good leadership is rarely observable in the moment. It's only recognized in the outcomes. And if all you're doing is what you're doing for today, you are also there to change the tomorrows as well. So don't give up and don't become exceedingly discouraged. It'll show up in the outcomes that you have had the impact, and you'll be surprised. There'll be people who tell you, there have been people who've come up to me and told me how much I've meant to them and how much their life changed, and I didn't even know they'd ever listened to anything that I'd ever told them. So you'll be surprised. You don't get to choose all the people that your life has an impact. But I'm going to tell you, if you show up, you do what you're supposed to do, you will make a difference. Always remember this: extraordinary leaders learn to lead themselves first. Before you have the right to lead anyone, anywhere, you have to prove that you are leading yourself, that you're making changes, you're developing new and better habits, you're quitting habits that don't serve you well. And so, are you where you need to be? Then lead with all of your heart. Do not become discouraged at what you can't see today. Your ministry, your work, your leadership, your life will be judged by the outcomes that you leave behind. And that's where good and great leadership is actually defined. You've been listening to Dr. Ron's Words of Wisdom, words on leadership, goal setting, and productivity. Consider it your vitamin or supplement today for your mind, your heart, and your soul. Wherever you download podcasts, would you subscribe to Dr. Ron's Words of Wisdom? Would you leave a rating and would you leave a review? It'd be very helpful. Remember, leader, you're doing better than you think you are. You, my friend, are making a big difference in this world. Until next time, this is Dr. Ron signing off.